Are you ready for the greatest show in fantasy football history, hosted by the incomparable Scott Connor and the one and only Ray GQ? I present to you Destination Chill, where football and fantasy collide.
Good evening, good people. Happy New Year to the Destination Devy family. We are back. First episode in 2024 and kicking off the off season. This should be a fun one. There's going to be a lot of real nuanced roster construction, war talk coming in the very near future on Destination Chill. But tonight's episode is going to be focused on regrets, reactions, reflections on 2023, things we could have done better as dynasty managers, as content creators. It's really going to be wide open. So I'm excited for this one. Back with my co-host, my friend, colleague, old Ray GQ. Already got the draft stuff in the background, which we're getting into that season. Super excited to be going to the Senior Bowl here in a couple weeks. But Ray, off season's finally here. What is good, my friend? How you doing?
Yeah, Happy New Year, Scott. Hope everything was well on your end with family and friends and all that good stuff. Crazy NFL season and just ready for rookie draft season. You know, I tweeted this out about a month ago that one of my favorite parts of fantasy football, favorite part of Dynasty is this time. You know, the result for me is the season. That's the payoff. That's the result of all the hard work that you put in through rookie drafts and trying to get your roster in compliance and making moves throughout the offseason. The actual fantasy season and the grind of it, even though it feels like such a tough, difficult grind, that's the payoff. That's the reward for all the work that you put in. So I am excited to continue to dive deeper into this game that we play. I think there are a lot of takeaways from this season, learning lessons, and a lot of holes in my game that I've been able to sort of, you know, accept, look myself in the mirror and figure out some ways to try to improve. So I'm excited. We've got an awesome rookie draft class. I think free agency is going to bring a lot of new, fresh situations and conversations to the table. So just excited to be able to dive into this with you now, going into the offseason and having a show where you and I can get together in a formalized, structuralized way every single week. It's going to be good, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. We've had a ton of great ideas that we've exchanged. And I think part of the challenges of being content creators, but also content creators that are doing stuff in multiple places with multiple shows, with multiple people, is figuring out what is the best way to deliver a lot of the ideas that we talk about in the voice chat, that we talk about in the Discord, that you and I are brainstorming back and forth when we're sending texts and voice messages going, man, that might be a good show. But there's a ton of great ideas, but being able to turn it into, hey, we have a 57-minute show that we need to deliver structured so that people can come and say, I listened to that 4-part series or whatever. and it really taught me something versus, hey, I have a bunch of questions. Because the unfortunate part is we don't always have the avenue to go back and answer every question. Like we just had an interaction where on Twitter, you retweeted one of my articles, which apparently conflicted with something you had said on one of your videos. And a couple people chimed in and they were like, hey, Ray, what you're advertising here doesn't exactly reflect on what you said in one of your videos. But what's missing in there is there's probably context with what I was writing about with what you were saying that isn't delivered in either one. And we don't have the time necessarily to go back and go, well, here's what it is. We don't have the ability to make a follow-up video addressing one question. So being able to be better, I think, at delivering stuff in a succinct manner, get in, get out. If you got the questions, that's why you join the Discord. That's why you join the community. That's why you address it specifically in a place where you know will give you the time to have those follow-ups. So that's one thing that I'm reflecting on. This really wasn't even one of my reflections until we started going off into this direction. That's one of the things I'm going to reflect on a little bit this year as a content creator, Ray, is to be maybe not more meticulous or pre-planned on some of my content, but there's a lot of times where I'll go and just record a show and that's just what's on my mind today. And I'll jot some stuff down and I'll pull up some stuff on my computer and it's hit record. And I think both of us have the ability to just sit down and create a show in 30 minutes. And it's just what's in my brain. But then you don't always have the ability to give the clarity or the details when somebody has a specific question. That's something I'm going to work on. Maybe that means a little more work in the pre-planning stages of some of the content. But what are your thoughts on that? Is that something you've thought about more? Because you're a master at sitting down and doing a 20-minute video. And man, it's probably Ray prepared for 3 hours for that video. And I know he didn't prepare for 3 hours the video, but what's your secret sauce? What's the secret sauce?
I mean, here's the reality is this, and I hope I don't strike a nerve, but it is what it is, man. We are both husbands. You and your wife love animals. Those are like your children. So you guys have things that you do in your own lifetime. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a amateur baseball coach. I'm all these things, right? So I don't have time to interact, engage, and in detail fully explain every single thing that we put out on this channel or on the website. I do give that time to people who are in Destination Devy's Discord. Literally from 7:30 this morning to about 15 minutes ago, there's been anywhere from 11 to 30 people, and we've talked about everything from Justin Fields to Trinity Score to future coaching, offensive coordinator moves. That's where my time is. I have to devote the time that I do have to the people who are paying for a service. So when we talk about join the Discord, sign up for Patreon, and then just some shameless, like I'm just trying to get you to buy some piece of junk. If you want to dive deeper, if you want specific questions answered, well, that happens inside the Discord. And I've got over 200 people who are paying for a direct line to me and you on a monthly basis. So that's the priority, right? So there are times where if you are a little confused, we do as best we can to kind of explain some things on Twitter, but that's not where my time is spent. Twitter is a marketing advertisement resource for me. That's what it is. It's a business. It's to drum up interest and curiosity, to get some takes off. But if you want the goods, if you want the details, if you want specifics, you got to join the Discord. Like, that's just what it is. That's what it is. And if you don't want to, that's fine. You don't have to. We put out free content, but don't get pissed off when you can't get every single meticulous answer addressed on Twitter. Like, it's just not going to happen. Not from me. Never has, and it never will be.
Yeah, definitely over the years, my Twitter use has changed from the personal interaction to more. Twitter is a news conduit for me. That's where I'm interested in what other creators are saying, what other people that are writing or producing content are putting out there. Like, that's where I get a lot of things where I'll just scroll through, read it and go, that's something to put in the back of my mind, and then bring it back and be able to create content or talk about that kind of stuff from what you're seeing out there. And then obviously it's a news conduit to just what's going on in the NFL. You're following NFL people and seeing rumors and seeing when players are injured or when coaches are getting interviews in places. mean, generally that's what it's for. But yeah, you definitely have to ration your time when someone says, hey, you posted about the Trinity, but explain it further. What does this mean in my 10 team start 10 best ball? What's the Trinity threshold there?
Yeah.
And it's part of, I think, the content thing that I was mentioning was maybe I have to do a better job on some of the stuff in explaining that, yeah, I might use one specific example, but I'm also assuming that, hey, just because you're not in a league with that format, that there's a little intuition by the listener to go, well, my league is a 10 team and not a 12 team. Let me draw some basic conclusions on how to kind of tweak what you guys are saying to play it for my league. But sometimes, you overestimate how much of that's actually going on because the person will just genuinely message you, hey, I'm in a 10 team. How does that change your approach on wide receivers? And I'm like, man, I wish I had a half hour to respond with a brand new podcast just to your question.
Right.
But in a nice way saying it's probably not worth my time to do that. So some to measure, but yeah, just being able to keep track of your hours, make quality content, but also direct it to, I think, the largest audience possible, but then give them some bones here and there to say, here's how you kind of can shift and use this yourself. Because ultimately that's what we're doing. We're trying to teach people how to become you and I.
Well,
and I don't mean that to be arrogant, but you know what I mean? Like teach people
because
to
of that,
think.
Because of that, some of the onus and ownership falls on the consumer. If you want more, if you want to understand, comprehend, dive deeper, then it's up to you to join those places and consume and take in and process that type of information. It's up to you to do that, to take another step forward, to go watch the 15 Trinity videos, which I'm just going to say it, Scott, it was fun putting that playlist together because when I started doing this, there was no tool. So I was truly on Fantasy Points Data Suite. Everyone's asking what it is. I literally was walking through it. Target share, this and that, and I'm walking through it. And then you just watch the evolution of it went from this, they developed the score, it correlate. It's all right there. And that's why I just got low tolerance for people that just kind of ask things when the information is out there. Go use Google. Go to YouTube. We got channels. The information is out there, but the onus is on the consumer too to do a little work, to go find some answers or spend money. Like go pay for the service that's going to help you become a better Dynasty player. Pay for the service that helps you become a better cook. You go to Toastmasters. I use things to help improve myself. Invest in the things that are important to you, the things that you, whether it's a hobby, like invest in those things, Scott. One of the new hobbies that I want to take up here in 2024 is, I'm just being honest, I want to stop smoking so much weed. I got to stop smoking so much weed. So I'm just going to transition from smoking weed to cigars. Like I know nothing about cigars, Scott, nothing. Cigars, and I want to understand, increase my knowledge of wine. I can go ask people, but it's up to me to take the steps necessary to learn. And I've done that. I paid for some classes. I want to learn. It's nothing that's life-changing, but it's something that I enjoy. So I'm going to invest in it, and I'm going to go try to learn a little bit more from people who have more experience in that world than me. So I'm sure people aren't here to talk about me and you and listen to us talk about wine and cigars. They want to know where we were wrong all year, the regrets, the learning lessons. And before we started this, Scott, you said nobody wants to hear about everybody we were right on. Nobody wants to hear about that. They want to hear and learn from us, from what the mistakes that we made. So they don't repeat those mistakes. And maybe they say, well, that's not a mistake, but maybe you can reimagine and look at it differently. So I think that's a great way to start off this first episode in 2024 and just kind of talk about the season in general, where we had some regrets, where we were wrong, how the process is going to evolve, change, stay the same. Where do you want to start with this thing? Because there's a lot. It can be players, it can be process, it could be league dynamics, it could be league capacity. What do you think? What do you think is the biggest thing that, let's start with regrets, that you have personally regretted, or move you made, player you did, whatever the process is from 2023?
There's a couple things, but I think I'm going to start with this because it's something that's already kind of slapped me in the face as we've transitioned to 2024. It's now the off season. And I don't want to call it laziness because, like you already mentioned, there's a time component to all of this. We both played in a lot of leagues. Luckily, a lot of leagues that were active and didn't have trade deadlines. So pretty much you could run it right up to the end. And I really don't have any regrets, and I'm guessing you don't either when you made that week 16 trade and you were in the semifinals. You kind of knew what you were doing when you made that deal. And now you look at the team and you go, yeah, there's a couple pieces I really wish I would have moved. But then you realize 2 weeks ago you were shooting for the finals and you wanted that Gabe Davis on your roster. Now you're going, hey, man, he's probably going to be a guy I'm stuck with forever. So those, in context, I can live with. I think the one kind of regret that I have is, and I don't even want to say it was I was in too many leagues. I think it was just laziness. You get stuck into the week to week setting your lineup grind. And I know I said I didn't want to call myself lazy, but generally there were teams where I go, these are just on cruise control. And I wasn't as aggressive in taking some of my own advice going, man, do I really need Tyler Lockett on this team? He's easy just to start every week and I'll live with the results. But then you get into the offseason, you know exactly how a player like that's going to be viewed. Worthless, old, wasn't that great in 2023, so why would I really want him? And it's probably a player looking back where I go, the time to quote-unquote liquidate was week 15, week 14. Because now in the offseason, I'm telling everybody else out there, liquidate him. I'm sitting here spamming Tyler Lockett for thirds in leagues. Why would I buy him? A third, right? Just a third. We're not even talking about anything significant, but just that type of just kind of not understanding. And I knew where the market would go for a lot of players when you get into the offseason. Why would I buy that pedestrian wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5? There's just no reason to give up a pick for him, even if it's the 306. But there were spots where I look back and I go, yeah, I could have done that. But the problem was I either wanted too much or I was just on cruise control. Hey, I can start Tyler Lockett. It's a start 12. I can start him. And then I look back and go, I wish I would have just sent out that trade 2 weeks before the season ended because it would have gotten off my to-do list. Yeah. So I think that was the first thing is just there were spots where, and then the other things being, I could have traded a couple of these good but quote-unquote win now running backs, for instance, like a Mixon or a Connor. But I'd kind of already said, well, I'm just riding with those guys for the rest of the year. But I remember some times during the end of the season where I had some spot start running backs on my bench. And my process is always, man, why keep the guy you can trade when you can fill in the spot starter behind it?
Right.
And I didn't take my own advice. So just some of those small things that I regret not being as active in the final few weeks. And one thing I'm kind of looking at going forward, right, is, man, this NFL schedule is tough, bro. With the damn championship and semifinals fall over like freaking Christmas. You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, Christmas Day could be the day you need to be making all these deals. And the other thing was you got these games that are going, you got 3 Saturday games. And, it's just like it is a rough grind over that last couple weeks that I kind of want to go into next year going like, man, I want to be good to go in week 16 and 17. I don't even really want to have to touch my teams that much, which means I probably got to put a little more work in the weeks prior to that. So just something looking back that now I see some teams where I'm just stuck and I know I could have made better moves.
Yeah, for me, man, I think it's distinguishing the difference between just flat out being wrong and a miss. I don't have regrets over that. I think there's a big difference between having regrets over things that you've done in leagues, in fantasy with your team, and then just being wrong. Being wrong is that's picking the player, and that's picking Mark Andrews and then him getting hurt, right? Like it's not a bust, so you're just wrong. Being wrong, like I don't regret any Bryce Youngs that I've drafted. I don't regret that. The result did not come out anywhere near what I thought. I don't regret investing in Daniel Jones because all the indicators and information coming into the season said that he should be a decent option at the quarterback position. Bryce Young's the first overall pick. Everybody believed Frank Wright was going to be an offensive good spot for him. Like the result did not play out that way. I don't regret that. Some of the things that I truly regret this season, those were wrong. Those were misses. They weren't good. Darren Waller wasn't good. Daniel Jones got hurt, but he wasn't good prior to that. Me saying Tony Pollard could be the overall RB1, that's just being wrong. That's just a miss. What I truly regret more than anything anything, Scott, it has to do with the rookies. And it is the conviction to move off of them before they've ever really done anything. And I do regret that. I regret not giving CJ Stroud the opportunity to even play, and the arrogance that we had thinking that we know about team situations. Because I went back through just Twitter, our Discord, and I just typed in CJ Stroud's name and then reverse engineered the conversation back to June and July. There were very few people across the entire fantasy space who was like, I think this is going to work in Houston. Everybody said the Houston landing spot was awful. This is a dumpster fire organization. Deshaun Watson didn't want to play there. Black quarterbacks ain't going to want to play there because remember the Bob McNair inmates running the asylum. Nobody is going to want to come to Houston. I bet you every damn receiver in the league is looking at Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Noah Brown saying, I'd love to go play with CJ Stroud. But the lack of information and the action that I took based on that lack of information forced me to trade damn CJ Stroud for Kenny Pickett, right? Like, because I thought that Pittsburgh situation was going to be so much better. They drafted O-line. They bring a tight end that can block. Najee and Warren and Pickens' second-year ascension. The preseason, this is going to be it. All that shit that happened in the preseason, man, did none of it come to fruition. Once the regular season started, it was all the same old vets, and that Pittsburgh Steelers offense looked just as bad as the year before because you know what didn't change? Matt Canada was still there. Yet I'm expecting a different result because they add one offensive tackle, because they signed some guard from the Philadelphia Eagles or the tackle from the Eagles. So for me, that's probably my biggest regret was not allowing the room and the space for some of those rookies to run a little bit. Tank Dell and some apprehension about his size coming into the NFL. You know, luckily I didn't do that with Puka Nacua, but the Stroud thing was a big learning lesson for me. So moving forward, especially with rookie quarterbacks, even the disdain that people had for Will Levis, the moment he started and threw 4 touchdown passes versus Atlanta, whatever negative bias was out there on Will Levis, you had a window to move him. Like if you had that rookie quarterback, there was a market to get out. Maybe it wasn't exactly what you paid, but 85% of what it was, you could have gotten out. So moving forward this year, whatever rookie quarterback that I get, I promise you I ain't trading them before week 5, week 6. It's just not happening. I've got to let that play out a little bit more. We can talk about players I was wrong, but process-wise, the tear down off of rookie quarterbacks, I probably will not be deploying that strategy in 24 and beyond.
So that leads to a question for you, because part of this with the regrets and reflections is, again, was it a bad result or was it a process where you say, I'm not going to repeat that again? So we have a pretty hyped rookie class coming up in 2024. And then we also get questions every once in a while, and I'm even curious as your thoughts on this with rookie scores and Trinity, because, you know, we even talked about this in voice chat like halfway through the season. You know, can we really grade a rookie's Trinity score through 8 games? Is it fair? Is it fair to say that 3.5 just means even if he's going to get better, if he's a 3.5 through 8 games, he's never getting to an 8? Is that fair to say? You know, and that's something that I kind of am curious as to your thoughts on, if we have to kind of treat rookies just a little bit different when looking at that data. But back to the original point, let's take Bryce Young, for example. Do you have any regrets? The process of drafting Bryce Young, no regrets. You already said that. Do you have any regrets on some of these rookies that you've seen a small sample size of play in? And let's also assume that if you're drafting a rookie that everyone hated to begin with, a small sample size of bad play could sink that player. Right? Guy like Quentin Johnston, man, no one really liked him. And then he got this golden opportunity and didn't do anything in the first couple games. He was almost already a sunk cost at that point, to the point where no one really even wanted him. So that's when you had a very limited window. But with a guy like Bryce Young, do you regret if you had a player that you had ranked high, you drafted him high, but also the community isn't just completely out? Now, the community, a lot of them are out on Bryce Young now because they saw a whole season. They see a situation that's going to be an uphill battle to get better in year 2. And now you're going, well, in year 3, it could be even questionable. But you also know in year 3, if you have a season where year 2 is no better than year 1, that's a tough road to hoe in Dynasty, right? A third-year player that's been bad for 2 years, it's tough to get out on that at cost. So just for some of these rookies, do you have any regrets about saying, all right, 4 games in, I've seen enough, and I'm willing to sell at 80% if the market allows it? That could have been Bryce Young. You probably could have got a first back out of Bryce Young if you would have moved him after a couple games. Because a lot of people would have said, oh, man, he's young. It's only a couple games. Look at his weapons. Any thoughts on that? Like, is there anything you're going to say? Is it player specific about, because I think it's the right process to get out of highly valued players. Because you're looking right now, Ray, at the player landscape. How many rookies from 2023 straight up right now could you get a 24? It's not random anymore because all the picks are accounted for. Let's just call it the 108. Okay, so we're just regular super flex 108. How many rookies in 2023 could you even get the 108 for? Hands down, I send the trade, they'll accept it. It's that easy. There's no debate or anything. What do you think?
Bijan, Gibbs.
Gibbs.
Are we including the quarterbacks or no?
Yeah, we're including Stroud. Stroud counts, but
Stroud.
It's just Stroud, I think.
Right.
I think it's just Stroud.
Richardson.
You got to throw A-Rich in there.
A-Rich, Puka Nacua, Sam Laporta, depending on the right format, right, with tight end. Format is assumed here. That's the assumption. Dalton Kincaid. Had he not been hurt, Tank Dell was probably in that range. And I'll say the one that's sort of emerged over the last month of the season that might fetch you that is Jaden Reed. Jordan Addison. I think they're like 8 or 9. I think it's about 8 or 9. It's right at that cutoff point, about 8 or 9. And a few of those, it has to be league-specific type scoring. I think that you could probably get that for that cost.
Yeah, I think when you're starting to talk Addison, JSN, Reed, Rashee Rice, Kincaid, A-Chain.
Yeah.
Those are very much like specific to the person that has that 108, right?
Right.
They may say, hey, Rashee Rice is a nice player, but I'm not giving up a 108 for him.
Right.
And then the person that has the Rashee Rice is going, well, I'm not trading him unless I'm getting something like the 108 or better. Right. So those are the fence players where you're sitting here going, all right, there's probably another half dozen or more that are
slam dunk 5. A-Rich, Stroud, Puka Nacua, Bijan, and Gibbs. Slam dunk. At Laporta 6.
I would say Laporta's in there because most people are playing even at 1.5. Someone would pay the 108 for Laporta. So there's 6. So when you're telling me that at the end of the season, and let's just say that's around average, because I bet you if you look back, that's probably pretty close to what it is most years. Where the next year, oh man, there's not 15 guys I'd give up the 108 for in the next class. Kind of tells me that we like a lot of those players that were on the fence list.
Mm-hmm.
But there might have also been, just operating under that assumption, there's some validity to go, hey, if you drafted that guy at the 105 and you're halfway through the season and there's some red flags, it makes sense to kind of re-roll on some of those, actually more than we probably do. But we also get complacent. You look at a guy like Rashee Rice or Jaden Reed or Jordan Addison. If you drafted them and they're on your roster, you just don't have the motivation to go and re-roll them, right?
Right.
Like, it's cool. Yeah, I like those guys. Those guys are good players. So that's not one of your first thoughts is, oh, man, I got Jordan Addison, but I need to go get the 108 for him. But I think from the way we're talking, I think it's more prudent to do that more often than we do. And people will push back and go, well, Scott, when are you ever going to just like have players that score points? But the idea isn't the 108 is going to be a better player than Jordan Addison. I think there's definitely more I can do right now with the 108 than Jordan Addison. 100%.
You think
there's
so?
More flexibility.
You think so?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes. Maybe not right this very second, but as we get to Combine and Senior Bowl and people start putting names to faces, I mean, in the next month, you're going to have 1,000 pieces of content out there. Oh, man, super flex mock draft. and you're going to get to the 108. You go, damn, that's the wide receiver 3 or 4 in the class. It's the QB 4 in the class. Like, there's options there. So I think you can do more with the pick than if you have an individual player. So just something I've been kind of thinking about. I'm always of the ilk, like, man, if I hit on a guy like Addison, there's no reason to re-roll. The guys you want to re-roll are, man, can I re-roll on Quentin Johnston before the pond gets drained, right?
Right.
But we don't think of just re-rolling on the guys that they're good. Zay Flowers, one we didn't mention. Another one where you could justifiably re-roll him for the 108 and be okay with the outcome, but maybe the tiebreaker is there. I have a flexible pick. I don't just have a random player. So I was just curious on your thoughts if you're going to be more aggressive in hitting the re-roll button early on a guy like Bryce.
Here's the thing. Quarterbacks, I don't want to do that with quarterbacks. They have, like, for better or for worse, they've got a little more leeway than other positions. Say what you want about Kenny Pickett. He got all this year to prove he could be the guy. He got all season until he got injured. He got it. And with quarterback, that's one where unless you come out the gate and you're a damn dog, and I mean like a bad dog, like wolf type dog, it just goes back to the conversation that you and I had with T-Law after his rookie season. And I'm not going to sit here and make apologies for Bryce Young that it was everybody else. This is what people do with Justin Fields. It's everybody's fault but Fields, right? I'm not about to say it was everybody's fault outside of Bryce Young, but as you can see now, revisionist history, from top down, that situation was cancerous. I mean, you got Hayden Hurst, players talking about how bad it is, new GM, owner is batshit crazy, in-season firing of the head coach, quarterback coach gone, running back coach gone, assistant head coach gone, GM gone. Like that situation was so rank and putrid, I don't know how to view anybody there. Like, legitimately, I have no clue. The only player that I know unequivocally that Carolina has that just balled out was damn Derek Brown, an interior defensive tackle. Other than that, it was just toxicity from top down. So the problem with a player like Bryce Young is this. Even if he gets better, even if he improves and gets better, his expectation, he failed so far below that mark that just to get back up to like 0, like how high can he really go outside of him completely destroying the NFL next year, which I just don't think that's a reasonable assumption. My only fear about pivoting off of skill position players after a small sample size in which we see their value spike is I don't want to miss on Puka Nacua type production. That's one of the things I'm very proud of is following that situation from week 1. This Ray GQ football brain. I'm thinking, man, you don't just go out there and get 15 targets, 20 targets in a game if you're not pretty good. Like it just doesn't happen. Very rarely does that happen on a consistent basis. And you're dealing with a coach who, the Los Angeles Rams, for those that don't know, run 11 personnel, 98% of their offensive formations. They got 3 receivers on the field. So even if Kupp was coming back, my thought process was Puka's going to be involved. I never said he was going to overtake Cooper Kupp and be the one, but I always said he ain't coming off the field. There's no way they're going to pull him off the field. So I don't want to miss out on that type of eruption, that type of explosion, because I can do the same thing that you're trying to do in week 4. I can go do that in week 15 for 2-3x more than what you did it for in week 4. I think every situation you must, and this is one thing that I am committed to this summer, is helping the fantasy space better understand offensive situations and potential ranges of outcomes based on those situations. JJ Zachariason put out that tweet the other day. Very, very simple, very simplistic. Just touchdowns in 22 versus 23. It's all the tweet was, Scott. Here it is right here. I'm going to pull it up on the screen just so we can see it, right? Touchdowns in 22. Let me move it off of your face versus 23. And you look at this, and isn't it interesting that the teams who the differential was the worst in the NFL in 23, Kansas City lost Eric Bieniemy, Philadelphia lost Shane Steichen. You go up and you flip that, Indianapolis at the top 4. The Rams, top 4 in the NFL. Houston, Bobby Slowick from San Francisco, top 5 in the NFL. Washington, who got Eric Bieniemy, more touchdown, like a better differential than Kansas City this season. Like, these things matter. Like, we always talk about situations matter in fantasy, but there are very few analysts and very few resources that actually dive into what those situations are and how to, like, what do most people do? Oh, there's a new OC, it's going to be better. Oh, that they lost Shane Steichen, it's going to be okay. They got Johnson. He was the quarterback coach. It's going to be fine. It's no one. Very rarely are people like, oh, it's going to be worse. Kellen Moore, worse. Just a worse, not better with Kellen Moore, right? People thinking that Dallas's offense was going to go down with Schottenheimer. It's still good. So it's learning more about these situations that helps your process that you're talking about. When to move off of an asset, when to trade. Is this really the right time when I know historically this OC only throws the 2 wide receivers and a tight end? That's historically what they do. Do I really want to move off of Michael Pittman because his value spiked and he got a whole bunch of targets the first half of the season? So I think every situation is unique. And I think with the rookies, you have to be a little more mindful of the ones who are producing, taking a look at their situations and making a more informed guess, because that's what we're trying to guess with more information. We're guessing with an incomplete table, man. Like, literally, when we're doing that right now, if I ask you why you're doing that, I just think his value spiked too much. I just don't. Well, let's dive into the offense. Why do you think this is not sustainable? Why do you don't tell me? Give me some quantifiable data that says, based on this, is probably not sustainable. And nobody really has that information in the fantasy space, or at least it's not being talked about because it ain't sexy. What's sexy is talking about the players that are on the TV behind me. Oh, they're going to smash. Wherever they go, they're going to be great. Maybe not. Maybe not. That is my biggest focus this offseason, is really understanding just formational usage of these offenses. And that information is out there, and I don't think it changes a lot, Scott. You go back and you look at Arthur Smith when he was the OC in Tennessee, he ran 2 backs, man. Same shit happened. You think it's just going to change once he becomes the head coach? There should have never been this idea that Bijan was getting 350 touches and Tyler Algier was getting 12. That's just not been his MO his entire career as an offensive coordinator. So it's a project and a reflection that I've had, because we do it every year. We dismiss the schedule. We dismiss coordinator changes. And the reason why we dismiss it is because we don't understand it enough to talk about it and articulate it with confidence. So we don't even deal with it. It's like kickers in defense. We don't even touch on it. Besides surface level, oh, it's going to be better. It's going to be the same.
Yeah, you're actually hitting on something that I'm just thinking through in my head while you're saying it. Is we do this as a dynasty community too, right? As soon as the offseason hits here, all 12 managers in your league are thinking, what? Man, my team can only get better from this year, right? But we also know the reality is, especially if we trust like historical WAR distribution, and you could probably look at historical distribution of how many touchdowns are scored in a season, the point differential for teams, like it probably kind of looks like it does year to year to year, right? Which means if you think about it, for every team that goes way up, there's probably another team that's going way down. And it's the same for your dynasty leagues. Like all 12 teams can't get better because they all got a pick in the first and the second and the third and the fourth round. And not all of them are going to have players on their teams where they're like, oh man, it's wheels up. But I bet you if you ask most people in your league, I'd say most of the 12 managers, if not all of them, would say, Ray, is your team going to be better next year? And you're thinking, well, if it was bad, it can't get any worse.
Right.
And if it was average, well, it had some bad luck or some bad breaks, and it's going to get better. But if I also told you, guess what? Next year, there's still going to be just as many wins and losses head-to-head in your league. Right? So your team, if it's going to get 3 wins better, someone else's team's going to get 3 wins worse. But yet that person over there is probably saying, oh, my team's going to be better. Yep. Everybody's team's going to be better. There's just going to be 20% more to go around next year. But then the reality is, you know what? The WAR graph's probably going to look the same. There's not going to be 10 receivers that are scoring over 9+ Trinity next year. It's probably going to be distributed very evenly. So I'm just sitting here thinking about that. Like, we do have to be better at saying truly like an invisible hand on each one of your dynasty teams, like something that is completely unbiased. You feed it in. I feed Ray's team into this invisible hand calculator. And it truly says, yeah, that's either it's going up or going down. And you may think, oh man, I got a young squad. It's only going to get better. And then it spits out, it says, Ray, actually, it's on the downward. But how? I have all these young players. Bryce Young can't get any worse. Quentin Johnston can't get any worse. But the reality is a lot of those guys may just kind of level off and fade away. And now you don't have anything. And you were mentioning that with Fields and T-Law. There were people that were out on Fields and T-Law after year one, right?
Yeah.
And then year two, man, they're going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And you know what? The people that said those guys are terrible quarterbacks, they'll never make it, they were probably partially right. And the people saying they were good, they're good enough to sustain jobs in the NFL, or saying they were studs, those people are partially right. But now we're 3 years in. It was probably a blend of both, right?
Absolutely.
Both guys are adequate, but it's probably not that they're complete busts, but it's also, oh man, that first year, Urban Meyer just was holding T-Log back from becoming the next Dan Marino. It was probably somewhere in between. Like water finds its level. You know what I mean?
I agree.
And it feels like we should be looking at our dynasty teams like that. And even I'm guilty. I look at all my teams and I go, man, all of them are going to get better next year. You know, I got 28 of my 42 in the playoffs this year. That's going to be 35 next year, just naturally, because they're going to get better. Where I have a blind spot to a lot of the places where it could get worse, but I'm just not thinking or I'm not seeing that it could get worse. So it's an interesting exercise, especially if we can start being better at, what does this come down to? Becoming better at being able to project the upcoming season, right?
Correct.
The new situations, new coaches, new coaching staffs, to be able to say realistically, it's fair to say because of X, Y, and Z, it's probably a good bet that this receiver or this running back is going to kind of just fall flat from where they were because of a situation change or a usage change. So I think that's something we ignore, and everyone just assumes, oh man, it's a new year. All my shit's just going to be better next year. And then you look back and you go, where did that go wrong? And it wasn't that you were wrong on some of the players. It's just maybe your team peaked or leveled off and you were just blind to see it.
Well, that's why for me right now, Scott, like right now at this moment on Wednesday, January the 10th, I'm not trying to do a lot with I'm just paying attention. I'm watching because what's happening right now, let's talk about what's happening in the NFL right now. What's happening is you just saw week 18. You saw a lot of non-stars play in week 18. And what was all the narrative? Sunday night, Monday morning, Derrick Henry's gone from Tennessee, buy Tajay Spears. This player didn't do shit in his rookie season, go buy this rookie. Go buy. It's hopium season to the 10th degree right now. And as we progress through the playoffs, what's going to happen, Scott, if on Sunday afternoon, Dontavian Wicks scores 2 more touchdowns versus Dallas? I mean, he's going to be a top 25 receiver. He literally on KTC, people will steam him up, right? What happens if Rashee Rice goes out there versus Miami and just smashes? They come out I'm watching what's happening this playoffs because there are so many fringy level assets that have an opportunity to increase their value. I'm watching the market. I want to know how people are thinking about these players. I mean, look at the news today with Luke Getsy being fired. I mean, it is enthusiasm for Justin Fields. Whatever bearish momentum your field shares had 24 hours ago, he's gotten a bump today because the narrative is, oh man, this signifies and signals they're keeping Fields. They're bringing in a new OC. What if, Scott? What if it's somebody from the Bobby Slowick tree? Right now, it's steam and hype season. So I'm chilling, man. This is a perfect time to reflect on your leagues, to reflect on what changes happen war-wise. Have there been any positional shifts? Looking at the Trinity, trying to bucket and tier the wide receivers that you really want no part of, the Xavier Hutchinsons, the Charlie Jones, the ones that are kind of in that middle range that you talked about a couple of weeks ago that you may have to make some strategic bets on. It's going to be a tough one, right? You're going to have John Mingo right on that line, right on the line of mattering versus not mattering. Right now, it's time to analyze the results of the season. I think so many times in Dynasty, we're so excited to just jump ahead, leapfrog ahead. I, right now, the question you should not be asking me nor Scott these questions. Who to draft? Which rookie should I take at the 107? I don't fucking know. Like that's not what we're talking about right now. What you should be doing is analyzing your league dynamics, understanding where the ranges and the new tiers are from advanced analytics, some of the tools that we have, truly diving into construction series to say, here's some of the things that were problematic for my roster in achieving the goal of winning this league. What are the type of things that I need to do in order to make sure that I'm in a better position next year? You're not going to win your fantasy championship in 2024 here January 10th. Like, you're not going to win it today. So just pre-plan. Just don't worry about who you're picking at the 111 spot. Why are you asking me that? The hell do I know? I don't freaking know who's going to be there at the 111. But what I do know is there's probably a bunch of players that you're carrying on your rosters that you can cut immediately and free up roster spots. What I do know is you can look back and say, damn, I sat and I had all this fab. Think about how many teams just got fab on their rosters and didn't pick up Flacco, didn't pick up a Drew Lock, didn't pick, like, you can look at the things that did not work for you and make a plan. That way, once free agency hits and the Senior Bowl hype comes and things start to actually pick up, like, you know what to do. Everyone's bypassing this very important time. I think it's the most important time in Dynasty Fantasy Football is right now, January to pre-draft. I think it's the most critical time because once the draft hits, like, you're going to know between ADP and prospect reviews, you're going to know who to take. Draft capital that's really going to dictate who to take. Like, the hell with my film breakdown is going to be where they get drafted. Like, right now, these 4 months are probably the most critical time in positioning and thinking about your roster to get it set up to manipulate and move around over the summer once training camp and preseason starts to go. Like, this is very important right now. Don't skip. Don't press fast forward through this portion. Dial in, focus in, reflect just like we're doing and figure out, you know what? Next year, I'm not going to be so arrogant as to say I've got all this fab. I'm not blowing it on Joe Flacco. I'm not picking up this guy. I don't want to. Why do I want to spend $8 for Kyron Williams? I've already had him, but you get the point, right? Like, it's really reflecting on the decisions and the moves that you made as a manager and saying, what can I do next year to be better?
Yeah, and I love the point about don't ask me who to draft because we get a ton of questions. You know, I have the 108, 109, and 111. Who should I be taking? And the reality is in that range, a lot of the information that we would need to break the ties or make those picks doesn't exist yet. So you can pre-plan it, but you're better off looking at that pick as a tier. Hey, I'm probably going to be able to have a receiver there. That's probably going to be a pick that I may be able to re-roll for a future first. But it doesn't come with any sort of definition. It's like it needs to be broad because there's a reason we don't know for sure. I can probably tell you who I'd take at the 102 or the 103 right now. But once you get to a certain point, you're kind of like, you kind of got to just leave that as an open space, and it should be it's a what could be. It's a pick I could move. It's a pick I could pick a player. It's a pick I could trade up. It's a pick I could trade back.
Scott,
so
I think
I gave you 4 options.
Scott, I'm going to push back on you. Sure, like right now today, but by the time the draft hits, when the Bears don't have the number 1 overall pick, when New England's the one that takes Caleb Williams, and when Jaden Daniels goes to Atlanta, whatever we say we would do at 101, 102 today, you get to April, you're like, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at these situations, and I kind of prefer, Daniels in Atlanta opposed to Drake May with Mike Vrabel in New England. Like that very well could be. I don't know. Like right now today, I truly just don't know. I like you said, I've got a range of players that I would rank, that I would grade, that I would tier, but it's probably not the most actionable advice that I can give you in January is who the hell you're going to draft at the 104. I don't know, my guy. I have no idea.
Well, and we're all guilty of that. People will ask us on Trades in 5, hey, I got the 101 and 103. What should I do? And a lot of times the answers are, if I had to pick today, here is what I would do. But you know what? 99.99% of people don't have to pick until May 8th. And it's going to be laid out on a platter what to do on May 8th.
Absolutely.
Pretty much. You're going to have 100 opinions. Some may say this, some may say that, but you're not going to have any shortage of information when you're making that decision. So it's almost like we shouldn't even bother entertaining that kind of content right now, because all it can do is bite you in the ass in the end. You know, people go, "Oh, Ray, you were saying Jaden Daniels 102 and he fell in the draft to the 18th pick." You know what I mean? What an idiot. Why would you take him 102 over Caleb Williams? Are you insane? But that could be something that someone could call you out on. Hey, you said that in January. That's what I've been planning on this whole time.
Yep.
And it went wrong. But, you know, it's interesting when you mention the reflections a little bit, because, you know, one thing I think that I can be better at is I am very much a process-oriented, dogmatic dynasty player. And sometimes I'm uncomfortable.
What do you mean? Just explain that real quick for people who may not know I know what you mean, but just explain that for people.
I'm very, especially this time of year when the season hits reset and we're on to a new year, it's very much just straightforward. What does your roster construction look like? Zoom out. If you think I don't care about players, you know, during the season, I could care less about most players right now. But that's also reflective of the market. If I ask most people, how many players do you truly care about that you have to go buy right now? It's generally going to be like the stud players where you go, I just would take them no matter what because they're so great. But everyone else is kind of in a bucket of like, I can take it or leave it on January 10th. You know, it's not a big deal if I have, you know, this random guy on my roster or not. Doesn't really matter. I could hit or miss depending on the price, depending on the availability. And sometimes I get caught up in thinking, man, I got all these teams. I can't go more than a week without doing something. Right. Sending out an offer, making a waiver claim, trying to get a trade done. Now, sometimes I get caught up in that. And then you kind of brought me back with that. This is a period to reflect. This is a period to watch what's going on instead of, because I'll do it. I'll be sitting here, click through a couple teams. Oh, man. Just came across a team, and I got Cortland Sutton on that team. Man, you know, Cortland Sutton's one of those guys that's right on the fringe of a roster clogger. I got to get rid of him, Ray. Got to see if I can get a second for that Cortland Sutton today. And you know what? The league may just not respond. A couple people may be checked out. They don't even respond. A couple other people get an offer. Man, I really want to pay that second for Cortland Sutton now. And they'll just say no. And then I'll get frustrated. Like, man, I should be able to get a second for him. He's a good receiver. Right. Probably going to be in a new spot. But then I sit there and go, if I'm not actively doing anything, I'm hurting myself as a dynasty manager because all these other people are out there because we're surrounded by a community of everybody that's just trade. If you ain't trading today, you're losing.
You're losing.
So I'm sitting here going, man, I haven't made a trade in a week, Ray. What is wrong with me? I'm slipping behind the competition. But you reminded me, am I really falling behind if I haven't made a trade in a week? You know what I mean? Maybe that's something that I need to be more open to is just there's a period in Dynasty where you truly are just reflecting. You are not obsessed with who you need to dump, who you need to cut, who you need to draft. You know, it's just sitting back and maybe waiting for more information and waiting for other people to become more engaged too.
Yes.
I'm sitting here expecting all 11 of my other league mates to respond to that trade within a half hour like they were in week 15, and they just don't. And that's okay. So I've reflected on that just during this episode.
And you should
just back off and not be as dogmatic.
I think through the playoffs, it's probably because here's the thing. Your league dynamics, the league mentality, like first of all, you need some time to just take a break from that quest in there. Whatever was going on in there, you probably just need to step back because there may have been some moves down the stretch that were probably a little ill-advised, but F it, I'm going for the push, right? Take a step back, let the playoffs shake out, let the rest of football play out, and just watch and analyze. Because here's the thing, in that Cortland Sutton example, while I think the premise of what you're saying is 100% right, like, yeah, I should be able to get a second for Sutton. If I could move him for a second today, both of us would do that. But you might not be able to do it. And what you might not be able to do it now, but if you're actively engaged in that, what happens when that manager says, I'm not going to give you a second, but I'll give you 2/3, Scott? Like, you're probably thinking, it's the 301 ain't bad. I'll take those thirds. It's 2 picks. I really don't want Sutton. Cool. You make that deal. Then they draft Michael Penix, right? I'm just using that for an example. They trade up and get Jaden Daniels, and that hype and that steam and that enthusiasm for that building and the players in that building, you probably can get the same damn deal then, if not more. What if Sutton gets traded to Kansas City? It's probably a good time to just not do anything in life, Scott. That's why meditation is important. It's called being still sometimes and not doing anything, just reflecting and being grateful for the situation that you're in. Your roster's not wrecked. Just sit back and chill for a little bit and literally just let some stuff play out. There's so much time to trade and to move and manipulate. Like, I'll be honest with you, I really don't want to move any young guys right now. I'm going to be complete. Roshan Johnson, Tajay Spears, I don't want to move any of them. Not right now, because there's a lot of situations that are going to change. And that doesn't mean the result is going to be a smash fantasy season, but Bryce's situation will get better. Rashee Rice, there will be a moment where, what if Kansas City doesn't bring in a free agent wide receiver? Now he's just sitting there as the guy. Just sit, be still, and reflect on that league. That way, when you do get active and you do get some more participation, you come in with a clear mind, come in with a clear vision, a clear view. Let some more stuff play out. Like, I think this is a bad time to be trying to manipulate stuff right now with rosters. Outside of clearing up, there are some obvious clear outs, right? Like, I don't want no damn C-Pats on the roster. I'm good with that. I don't need any Juju Smith-Schusters right now. Like, I don't need Devontae Parker. I don't need to wait and see. But there are specific players where it's probably best to do what? Take your phone, put it down. Sometimes just put your damn phone down.
Yeah, I think any of the stuff that involves engagement with another manager, like trading stuff, is probably something that you're okay if you don't do. It's different than just roster cleanup. I can go through, cut some of these guys that I only added for week 17 or whatnot. Like that's the low-hanging fruit stuff that you should already be doing as soon as you look at your team. But it's interesting because this is something I really didn't even come into this show thinking about, because every day, just the way that I'm wired, I'm cutting down on some of my leagues. I'm not going to play in as many, but the ones that I'm in, I am guilty of. I'm just sitting at my computer, clicking around, reading stuff. I'll just click on a team. Man, is there anything I can do today? And partially it's because we've created a community. Man, you go over into that Trades in 5 Discord, and it's just, dude, what trade should I make today? I want to try to send out some offers this morning. What should they be? And I'm sitting here going, like, I'll respond to people, but I'm like, man, I feel like kind of a fraud because I'm not even doing it myself. Yet these people are in here going, man, look, how do I fix this roster? It needs to be fixed by January 17th. And he has a week to fix it, and it's like, man, I don't really know if it's possible or if it's even more stressful, or the stress to go and try to do that right now.
You know what I think? Some actionable stuff that during the reflection period, like literally go on the Trinity tracker, filter by team, and just start looking for maybe some dart throw receivers that you might be able to add off of waivers. I know you and I added some Bo Meltons. What does he become long term? I don't know, but he's tethered to the quarterback who was second in the NFL in passing touchdowns, and his opportunity was pretty nice towards the end of the season. Just go, whatever tooler it is, go through and just see if there's some cheap, low-hanging fruit that you can pick up for nothing off of waivers and just have them. And the good thing about those players, if Green Bay goes in a 2024 draft and they walk out with 2 more receivers, I'll just probably cut Bo Melton probably soon after that. Like, he's probably not that guy. If the Rams draft 4 running backs, well, it might be time to move some Kyron Williams. And yeah, maybe you lost some value, but the players that you could probably get, I guarantee if I went through everybody's league, there's some guys on waivers right now that you can add that are probably that need to be added. Regardless if you like them or not, you need to add them. Use some this time to dive into some stuff and really look at your roster and see if there are just some low-hanging opportunities to grab some usable assets, some of those backup quarterbacks in lineup leagues. Like, just go check. Go see who got dropped. I mean, there's a lot of – I was shocked, Scott, looking through, I believe it was our HVV league, at the players that were on waivers right after week 17. I saw like Darnell Mooney on waivers, and this is a 36-man triple copy start 13. I'm not saying that Darnell Mooney is some groundbreaking world beater in best ball. If I would have saw Mooney on waivers, I would have picked him up for free. It was on first come, first serve, Darnell Mooney. And that was that was done because I know the manager that had Mooney was like, he ain't going to score nothing this week. I need to pick up a body that's usable. Go through your leagues and reflect on everything. Just go through them. Guarantee you, Scott, you can go through 50% of your leagues right now, and there are players that are on waivers that you're like, why is he on waivers? Let me pick this up. Let me dump that Cordero Patterson. See you later. You know what I mean? At Keyshawn Boutte, you've been holding on to all year long. Probably time to go. Reflect. Be still. You don't have to win. Here's the only guarantee that I'm making. You will not win your league in January. I guarantee you that. You're not going to win your 2024 fantasy championship right now in January. It ain't happening. It's not happening. Unless you're in some league where you're able to trade for Josh Allen and Burrow and Chase and okay, I don't know what I just did. I took us off the screen, Scott. Hold on. All right, now we're back. Now we're back on the screen. But that's what you need to do at this point in time. I think being still and reflecting is really important, man.
Yeah, and just to everybody, you're not going to lose your league now either. You make a mistake, you cut somebody you shouldn't have cut, or you trade away somebody for a third, and it ends up being somebody you wish you would have kept. I mean, they're the small moves that you make now that there's times where they pay off, and then there's times that they don't. But the reality is there's so much variance and so much that's going to change between now and November when we're talking about the middle of the 2024 season. Like, I've never really done that, right? But you look back at some of the content in a season. So, like, just in the season, I look back a couple times at some of the stuff we were talking about on Trades in 5 in, like, March and April. Some of the takes were laughable. Awful. And just the way we're sitting there on the show speaking in absolutes in March. You know, this guy's going to be for sure a top 36 receiver. Then you get to the middle of the 2023 season, you're going, what? The guy was bad, now he's out for the year. Now, you can't control some of that, but the point is, at all points during the Dynasty season, we talk in absolutes.
Yes.
Which we should. I mean, we talk with conviction. A lot of the stuff we talk about is process, so that really is going to always be, hey, it's a definitive statement. But then we also don't respect sometimes that in the future, you look back and you go, yeah, that was actually the complete opposite. The polar opposite of what I was saying was actually what happened. So just kind of being humble with that. Honestly, man, there's not many other regrets or reflections that I have. I could speak to stuff about how maybe we overvalued quarterbacks a little bit at the high end, paid too much for them in startups or auctions and whatever. But I still don't think, looking back at the war, like that the process was wrong there. It was just, there was a better way to skin the cat. You know, like someone else had an even better process that worked in this specific season. So I can't really even think of anything else that I'm like, I wanted to get off my chest.
Well, let's give the people a little treat here at the end of the show. And I'll start first to give you some time to think about it. But let's give some player takes that we were just wrong. Just flat out, strong conviction, wrong.
I like
just,
it. And
let's try to avoid the ones that got injured. Yeah, I was wrong on Daniel Jones. Probably wasn't going to be good, but he got hurt early and didn't play half the season. You can't be wrong on Aaron Rodgers. He got hurt the fourth play of the game, of the season. I'm trying to think through some players that it was just flat out wrongness. Just didn't think that player would be good, or you thought that player would be great and they were awful. You didn't think they would be good and they smashed. I'm thinking through this. Who is that one player? Do you have anybody in mind that you just know you were flat out wrong on? I've got, God, I'm trying to think through. There were a few, but I'm trying to isolate this down into like 3 that I was just wrong, and then really quickly just why we were wrong. Do you have anybody? I'm looking through some names now to get some.
I have a couple. I think they were more of, I put them in one bucket and they ended up in another bucket.
Okay.
I would say Marquise Brown was one. If you would have just told me, I know he got injured towards the end of the year, but if you would have just told me Kyler Murray comes back in the second half of the season and looks like a future starter, that there's no question, because I think we're entering the offseason where there's no questions Kyler's the starter.
Oh, they've already said it. They said they're
questions
building around him. Yes.
So if you would have forecasted for me that, hey, the 2023 season's going to end, the Arizona Cardinals are not picking in the top 3, and they fully committed to Kyler Murray going forward, which probably meant he had a good second half of the year, I would have told you Marquise Brown would not have been wide receiver 50 or whatever the hell he was.
Right.
Like, he wasn't great. He actually faded
He
when
did.
Kyler Murray came in,
He
and then
did.
he got injured, and people are going to remember the injuries with him because that's been a story of his career. But there was a 4 or 5 week stretch where he was a zero, even though he was out there. So unless we get more context, yeah, he's been injured since week 7 when he refractured his foot or something like that. That was one where I would have said that's a historically good player. The Trinity backs that up, but had the worst stretch of like 8 games of his career in a situation where if you told me that would have been his situation, I would have said he would have thrived. So that was one where I had a lot of exposure to, and I was expecting one thing and got way below that. We even did videos of like buy Marquise Brown, you know? So that's an L. Another one, Terry McLaurin. If you'd have told me they lead the damn league in attempts and he has his lowest target share year of his career and he's a wide receiver 4, that's a historically good player that if I would have told you the situation is what it was, he would have been better than what he was. So now he's one of those guys I'm not sure what to do with.
Yeah.
And I think he's somebody people will dismiss. And there's a world where the old Terry McLaurin comes back next year on a totally different offense. They could look totally different, and he's at 15 points per game. You know, he could be a steal, or it could be, right, that this was the start of the decline for Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
He's never getting back to that. So that's one where I would have told you confidently, you know, that's a top 36 receiver, especially if he has the situation that he does, and he wasn't. So now he's kind of in no man's land going into the offseason. So those two stick out to me that I had a ton of exposure to. And then there's others that, you know, at the same time I was right on. You know, Jahan Dotson, Elijah Moore. Like, they're just Jags. They're just guys.
Nailed them.
So, like, that
you did nail.
Receivers tough to navigate in that range, but those are two that stuck out to me that burned me. McLaurin and Hollywood.
And last one I'm going to ask you, and I'll let you think about this while I give you mine that burned me, is which one were you the most negative on and they've changed your lens on that player moving forward? So think about that, and that'll be how you close it out. The 3 that I were dead ass wrong on, Scott, and ironically, they're all 3 running backs. Rachaad White, I was just like, I'm out. Inefficient. No way. Didn't even draft. And the reason and how I kind of determined this, I went and looked at my underdog exposure because that's where I had the most teams. 150 leagues in Best Ball Mania. 150 teams. Very little Rachaad White. Just didn't want him. Didn't think he'd be good. Buccaneers are going to suck. Fade Rachaad White. James Cook. I mean, he was the last film session that I put out before the season started, and I was like, I think he's okay, but there's no way they're going to ride this guy to be the running back. Just too small, never done it before, don't think he's very good. Still didn't get the goal line work. Still don't know how much. I look at him and Saquon or Breece Hall, and they're not even in the same stratosphere, but you know what? Worked enough for the Bills, and James Cook, if you had him, I mean, his value spiked, and he's done well. And then the last running back that I was just, you know, didn't want to buy into or believe in or whatever the case you want to call it was who was it? I don't know. I think that was just those two. James Cook, James Cook. Yep, James Cook and Rachaad White. Those were the 2 big ones for me that I just was off of. Of course, Bryce Young from a quarterback standpoint, but looking at those running backs. Oh, Dameon Pierce. That was the 3rd one. Now that is the biggest one. I was all in. And it coincides and correlates with the fact that I thought Houston, I didn't know enough about Bobby Slowick. Scott, I didn't know enough about him. I didn't know enough about him, and I made these preconceived notions about Houston being awful and C.J. Stroud not being able to work there because they weren't going to be able to protect him and he had no weapons. Dameon Pierce is going to have to lead the backfield. That slapped me in the face so hard, he got usurped by Devin Singletary, who people hated more than Pierce coming in. And as I reflect on this, what learning lesson can I take about the running back position? I don't know, Scott. It's volatile. I mean, you're still going to roster Pierce because he had opportunity. He just got beat out by clearly what they believe to be a better player. So it has forced me, and I've seen more and more people, Scott, I don't know if you've noticed it too, in the dynasty space talking about how difficult it is to do dynasty rankings, that people don't even want to do them anymore because of the way that people play, the market. I've completely changed my tiers. And first of all, I've condensed the amount of players that are even in my dynasty ranks. I got 5 tiers, Scott. Diamond tier and elite tier. Those are your top players. Whoever you think is really good, Scott, they're in those 2 tiers. And then I got 3 tiers where majority of players are market positive, market neutral, and market negative. All I care about is what does everybody else think about those players. And it's tough because people ask me, Ray, well, who do you have ranked higher, David Montgomery or Ramondre Stevenson? Aaron Jones or Alvin Kamara? And I'm just kind of like, they're market neutral players. Like, nobody really wants them. Nobody's really trying to sell them. I don't care. Like, pick whichever situation you like. I truly don't care. I don't care. Give me Monty. Sure, he's a little bit younger. Give me Ramondre. Give me Aaron. I don't care. They're just market neutral players. David Njoku was also a miss. I did not envision Njoku taking his game to top 5 level. And again, I don't know if that sustains with Watson or was that a byproduct of Joe Flacco. But I think those 3 running backs, White, Cook, and Damian Pierce, my 3 biggest just player misses this year, outside of Daniel Jones and Bryce Young.
Yeah, I'm going to have to dive a little bit deeper, but one thing that I had noticed about the running back scoring this year is it as a whole went down again, but it also really clustered in that range, which just speaks to the fact that if someone's asking you, who do you prefer, Ramondre or Montgomery or Rashad White, and it's really, they just have a spot on your team, right? I want one of those guys probably, but when you're telling me to pick the nuance between, well, do I add a second to one of them to get the other ones? Almost always it's just going to be, probably
Nope.
not.
Yep.
Because the difference between them is so small that you can't really overcome the variance with being able to pick between them. So it's almost like any of them could get hit in the draft. Any of them could get hit in free agency. Any of them could get injured. And the odds of those things are all higher than the difference between the two. Yes. So I'm never going to pay for one over the other. And that feels like the entire running back landscape. It'll be interesting when we start diving into the war and really how flat it is in certain ranges and how that reflects with the KTC value of the players. Because I think the general consensus too is that's how a lot of people are playing the running back position. So you can tell me the distribution of the war is flat, but then when you tell me the market is flat as well,
yes,
then what? It's almost like, great, I know the player position, the war is flat. But then when I go to the market, if they're also going to treat everybody in there as flat, what the hell do I do? It's like, I just want enough to get by to satisfy what my team's going to need, but there is no selling for a profit or, tearing down for extra value. If the market's just going to be flat, then it's almost a position where you're wasting your time really doing any analysis on players in there. If you tell me this running back's going to fall in that running back 10 to 25 range, there's no analysis needed. That's where they are. So the last thing I'll say, regrets for me, is tight ends. I didn't respect the ability for a guy like Laporta to come in. Redraft, 0 Laporta, 0. And we're talking hundreds of teams, 0. And so the thought that a rookie tight end could come in and I think we get caught up in this, well, if they're not a difference maker, they don't matter, which still is generally true. But there were a couple more tight ends in that, 4 to 9 range this year that were clearly better than the others. But I just assumed, well, there's 0 chance Laporta is going to be a difference maker. Right. So I had dismissed that. But then because of his name and his draft capital and his opportunity, he was expensive relative to the everybody else's. So I just went, why would I draft him in round 7 when I can get Hunter Henry in round 20? So I just skipped him over entirely. And I wish I would have had a little more respect for that. It's going to be interesting now. How do people treat the tight end position? Because I think it's now seen, you've talked about it as there might be 9, 10, 11, 12 guys that are good.
I think
and a couple rookies coming in.
I think it's going to be, I think it's going to swing the pendulum way far because now you got McBride, who people think is tight end 1, Ferguson. And I'm going to say one that we talked about. There's a lot of enthusiasm for Likely and what he's done with Baltimore and what happens when Andrews comes back. Not that Andrews is getting replaced, but has Likely earned his way into a dual tight end target share. I think it's going to overreact the opposite direction. Everybody's going to be I think they're going to be overdrafted. overvalued. But here's the thing, you're going to want those guys. Well, like the fact that they're overvalued, it's not going to make me not want Trey McBride. Like I still want Jake Ferguson, who looks like a stud. I want Njoku, you know. I didn't respect George Kittle enough and his ability to continue to earn. Tight end is tough, man. Tight end is tough. The only ones that we truly respected from day one were Andrews and Kelsey, and neither of them helped you do a damn thing come week 17. That positional advantage that you had coming in this season did not exist in week 17. It didn't, you know? It makes it what it makes me want to do, and I'm gonna end with this. I'm gonna get a couple of Noah Grays just in case. I'm gonna make sure I keep a few likelies just in case he's earned some opportunity. It's the same approach I did with Ferguson, same approach I did with McBride. If I see it happening, I'm gonna rely on what evidence is there, and then I'm gonna have to wait for something to disprove what I've just seen happen. It's the same thing I said with Ferg. It's the same thing I said with Schultz. I don't believe that the Baltimore Ravens are going to yank him off the field under Monken next year and he's never going to touch the field again. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen, man. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, future show to come on tight ends, because I actually think it might be the opposite of what you said. I think there's going to be less conviction than ever, especially with Hawkinson's injury. I don't know if people are going to be sitting here going, I'm going to be able to nail the positional advantage guy in round 2. They may look at that list and go, man, there's 9 or 10 guys I'm comfortable with here. Why would I take next year's Kelsey or Hawkinson in round 2? Or do I really want to take Laporta in round 2 or round 3? It may cause the opposite effect where everything we were doing last year, oh man, you need one of these top 2 or 3, or you might as well punt the position. No. It may be everyone's scared to take the tight end 1 because the team that's getting the tight end 9 or 10 may get the same thing and they do it 8 rounds cheaper. So I kind of wonder how that's going to reflect in this year's early draft. That'll be something.
They're young. Dynasty, they're creatures. Dynasty managers are creatures of habit, man. The reason I knew I shouldn't have drafted 34-year-old Kelsey. I knew it. I'm getting a young stud. They're all young. It's going to be fun. I think that's going to be the market where that's going to be an interesting one because I think the Goddards of the world, the Freiermuths, nobody's going to want them. Schultz, no. Think about Dolchich, Chigo, Conquo, how high those guys were going and just fell flat. The fact that a few of the young ones showed elite, like Trey McBride was the best tight end in fantasy football the last 6 weeks of the season. Monster. In 23 years old. People are going to want those guys. Dynasty managers are creatures of habit. Everyone's chasing Kelsey, and the reality is that there is no Kelsey, and there'll never be another Kelsey-type Gronkowski in the near future. So it's fun. We've recorded for an hour and 20 minutes. We got to get over to the Discord, Scott. I just want to say that as we start this 2024 season, this is the start of our 2024 Dynasty season. I highly encourage you to make sure you're tapped in, not just to Destination Devy, but make sure you're checking out the Trades in 5 channel, Manic and Chill, Dynasty Trades in 5 live stream. Go get your rosters reviewed. Scott's got calls where you can set up time to talk to him. Join the Destination Devy Discord. I cannot encourage you enough to try out the tools on the website. And if you're watching this video and you're like, I wanted to try it, but money's a little funny, right now using the code capital T, lowercase x, capital S, that's like the abbreviation for Trinity Score, you can get access to the tool and to the site for $1 for the rest of the month. $1. If you don't like it, it will expire at the end of the month. You don't have to do anything, I don't think. Make sure. But it's $1 to try the tool. And with that, not only do you get access to the Trinity, you get access to the War tool. Everything Scott's been talking about. You can go punch your team in, punch your league in for $1 freaking buck. Get access to the website, the most viewed article that we've ever had, your tectonic transactions piece yesterday. Don't even think you knew that. Go try it out. $1. Use the code TXS. Get access and try it out. Be still. Be patient. Reflect. Scott, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
No, I mean, you pitched everything. I think one thing I was going to say earlier that I just want to make sure everybody hears. If you do want the best bang for your buck, join Heisman. If you want hey, I wasn't sure about what you said in that article, or Ray, what you said in that video, that is the one place in the space where you and I will be in there for hours. And you can just say, hey, Ray, you got a second to take my question. And you're always going to say, sure. That's the one place, not on a video, not on Twitter, not even in the Discord sometimes, because there's so much going on in the Discord. But that is the one spot that if you tap into that voice chat, there's a very good chance you will have opportunity. Forget about the did it calls or the roster reviews. I mean, those are fine if you want to sign up for that service. But if you want something where it's like at almost any point, I see Ray and Scott in there and I want to ask them a question about my team, about a process, or about something, like that is the spot. So I just want to throw that out there that there's nothing else like it. And when it's popping, like you can never say, hey, I never had a chance to talk to you, Ray, in that month that I was in the Discord.
Never.
That's your own fault if you're in Heisman, right? Otherwise, like you're basically on the phone with Ray if you want to be.
All
like
day.
You're in the chat talking to him for 3 hours in a row. Like that's what you pay for. So you can't pump that enough because it's the best service out there.
There is nothing like when we're in there until 2 a.m. and there's 23 people at 2 a.m. talking down, and you look up and you're like, this is ridiculous. I got to go to work tomorrow. What am I doing? I'm out of here. And then you're right back in at 8 a.m. the next day driving to work. It's the best place. It's the best place. So appreciate y'all being here. We're actually heading over there right now to the Discord for the AMA session. Appreciate everybody being here. Make sure you follow Scott on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, and then tap into everything that we're doing. We appreciate you. We're out. Peace.